Welcome to the Outer Fringe. We have all the makings of a fabulous episode today. I'm super excited. We have Joseph Lyle in the house. We have my Minnesota accent, which is just so cringeworthy. Did you know, fun fact, that Minnesota accents are in the top 10 unsexiest accents? So I have to listen to myself and think that in the back of my head. And then we got Brian, the mouth breather. So, you know.
Yes, Brian the mouth breather. I don't know. I dated a girl from Wisconsin, and she totally had that accent, but like I could get past it. Like I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world. But every now and then, yeah, it does come out. Even though how long have you lived in Idaho?
3 years.
We have a no accent state.
Yeah.
Which is why we have all the call centers. Plus, it's really low cost of living, so people pay next to nothing to have their Verizon or whatever call centers here. So, yeah. But like everyone asks me, why don't I have an accent from back east, like a Boston accent, right? And I'm like, I don't want to sound like an uneducated shipyard worker. And like that's what I hear, and everyone like celebrates it. I hear girls are like, "Oh my God, the Boston accent! It's so." I'm like, how is that sexy? I don't get it at all. Like
it's like a power thing.
I traveled
Women like
around.
that powerful. Not a power thing. What is it? It's like I'm gonna bend you over a dumpster.
It's that chances are he's wearing a wife beater.
Yes,
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
he kind of looks like a little like he's had a hard day at work, but he can like protect you, and he wants to feed the kids even though times might be hard.
Yeah,
So it's kind of sexy.
yeah.
'cause it's
Wife beater and a
nostalgic or
bottle of
something.
whiskey.
I'll be right home. I gotta get beers with the friends first.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the thing is, like, I came from there. I know that like Southie ain't tough. Southie's a whole bunch of like heroin addicts living in their mom's basements.
The movies.
Yeah, like it's just, I know. Like Dorchester and Roxbury, they were tough. You didn't hear anything about them,
shit.
but they make movies about Southie. I'm like, Southie ain't shit. So yeah. Okay, so right into crazy topics. So I read this thing online, right? I'm sitting there, I'm awake late at night, I'm just scrolling different stuff, and it was about like, oh my God, why is it that when I try to bring the word of Jesus, like people just really always turn me down. They're so rude to me and everything. And I saw this whole long response to that question, and it had to make me think, because the guy said like the process is not for you to carry the word of your religion to somebody else. It's so that you go out on a mission, or you go out trying to spread the word. And what happens is that, you're basically doing this annoying thing, trying to take people's time, and people will be negative towards you. So it reconfirms that you are part of a singular tribe, and that everyone else is considered as other. So the whole process of doing missions and trying to carry the word is just to like bring you into the folds of the inner group more, right? And I was like, oh my God, that's like some really great psychology. And I never thought of it that way, but I think that's far more the truth than like, oh, hey, somebody knocks on my door and I start accepting, their book and their belief. It's more for them to feel like, okay, well, I knocked on, 200 doors and no one's like us. You're the only people that are like me. I can never leave this inner unit. So I don't know. Thoughts? Right.
Oh, bunches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that there's a psychological aspect to being in a religious group that goes out and tries to carry their word, right? However they view the word of God. And they might send people on missions to other countries. They might send people door to door in their neighborhood, and you might see them and they might be very polite people. And yet when they get to most doors, right, it's like, thank you, but no, right? Or they might get more of a negative response, like, don't come around here again, right? And so what they get is this repeated experience of, they think they're doing it in a positive light. Like, I'm going to go carry our message because our message is the message. Like, that's one of those key components too. Not that like other people could be right or other messages could be good. So you carry your message, which is the penultimate message, and get shot down over and over and over again. And it increases the like tribal notion that you are with your people back at the church, back at the home group. You know, it's nobody else thinks like this, so that it's not really about carrying the word. It's about making you feel like the rest of the world is a scary, negative place, and so you have to come home. And it like,
I could totally see that.
It reinforces this whole like, we're the only people that think like this, and we're the only people that we're safe to be around, right? Which further compartmentalizes different groups.
Totally. It's I think in all religions too. Like, it's hard because I think that people's hearts. I believe people have good intentions. Well, that gets me in a lot of trouble, but I do think that they mean well. But I think psychologically, there's a huge level of like affirmation that we all want, especially with like a belief system. And if you're trying to hold that belief system in place, resistance is a powerful way to make you feel like whatever you have is reflecting. So I think it's kind of like, it sucks sometimes because there's a lot of religious people that I can't even have a conversation with that might threaten their belief a little bit, because it almost like they just won't necessarily go there. It's almost like they want to be reaffirmed, but they'll take it like, so like if I have an opposing belief, or if I'm confused about something, if you disagree with them, they won't have the conversation because it's threatening. But if you agree with them, it's all good. It sucks. I don't know. Some people, some of my best friends, like still like super religious, are practicing their faith, and they're game to talk about it all.
Yeah.
And those aren't the guys out on the mission field though. And it's hard. My grandpa was a missionary. A lot of my close relatives and family members like are into it, and I don't know, it just seems kind of weird. Like, it seems a little bit Americanized to me too, maybe, or westernized, better way to put it.
So the part that I was like really getting into was, you know, yes, a lot of people that go in are good-hearted and they want to be helpful, right? And I think that a lot of people are, right? But it's not, those aren't the people that are controlling this, right? It's there's a couple people who are maybe centralized power, have something to gain by keeping this group tighter, you know, by building up some walls between their group and other people. And that's who's, you know, sending people out on missions. That's who's sending people out to do door to door. So you're taking somebody who has good intentions. You're taking a large number of people who have good intentions, and a few of them are saying, go do this, and knowing at the end that they're going to have kind of more control. It almost sounds like, I mean, American military, right? It's like, what do? We try to go and control some area. And of course, they're not like us. But did we really need to go there in the first place?
Right.
Did we really need to try to control? And then, you know, you take a lot of good intentioned people and who want to, you know, go and be peacekeepers, or, you know, and then a few people in power end up like pushing them out there, you know, making them do whatever they think is right. And then they get to say, oh, but they're so different, right? And because they're differences, we should be afraid. Or because they're differences, we should stay there and occupy. Or because they're differences, we should arm and tell them to go fight somebody else, you know?
Well, my belief is that organized religion was kind of the first form of government control. I think that people really used religion as a way to kind of guide people into certain ways of living, but it was kind of a control thing. Like, this is what you have to do to be right with God. But it was also a way to control the masses and kind of, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Am I totally off base? But that's something that's always kind of been in my head, is that it was almost like a way of controlling people, because spirituality is such a beautiful thing, and connecting with God is such a beautiful thing. But then there's all these things that have been put in with it, with like the whole dogma of religion, like shame, guilt, feeling inadequate, feeling like you're not doing enough, like always feeling like I should be better, I should be more godly. And then in turn, almost kind of like doing things that are completely the opposite because you're built up with all this shame and guilt that you start reacting to life in a negative way.
Well, I mean, when I went to Rome, and you can see how, and it just became so apparent. Okay, so over here next to the Colosseum, you have the old place where the palace of the Caesar was, right? The Palatino up on the hill. And what they did was they took it down like marble stone by marble stone, moved it 2 miles over, and built the Vatican. So they just said, okay, we're going to install the Pope in the Vatican, you know, using literally the same foundation and stones of the entire building that the Caesar just lived in 2 miles away in the palace, right? And you're like, oh, that was the switch, right? Instead of, you know, all roads lead to Rome, everyone has to be taxed that way. It's now we have religion and everyone will be tithed. And instead of calling it a Caesar, we'll have a Pope, right? And like, because Catholicism is like some really way out there version of this basic Christianity. I see a lot of people who like understand basic Christianity. They like the ideas, the whole what would Jesus do? I think that's a pretty like simple idea that different people believe. But then you're talking about guilt and shame and about all these other saints. Are they ghosts? Are they not spiritual? I don't know. Well, they got to pray to those. But it was just a transfer of power into a different name.
I think the missionary work is like polluted from the get-go too, because the word gospel means good news. So Jesus was basically saying, go to spread the good news. What's the good news? Like, what did he talk about? There's life. There's abundant life for you right here, right now. The kingdom of heaven's within you. That was how he started his mission. He said, repent, change your ways. Eckhart Tolle puts it this way. He's like, my interpretation of what he meant by repent is a psychological shift. Like, and he talked about that a lot in his teachings too. You have to renew your mind to be born again, to be rebirthed through like a shift in the way that you think consciously. And so the law of sin and death had been there all up until Jesus came historically. And so the original mission is actually to not make you feel like shit for being a real human being. It's actually, I think that Jesus was a philosopher and it could have maybe gotten turned into a religion. And I don't want to step on any toes by saying I know or I don't know, but I wonder about it a lot.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because he's basically saying it's like a notion of the human ego that's causing the suffering, kind of a lot like Buddha talked about. So like change the way you think, get outside of, but it sucks because like I get knocked, my door gets knocked on, or I'll be downtown with friends and somebody will be on a soapbox telling everyone they're going to hell.
Yes.
And I've even gone up to them and been like, man, I feel like for you to have the courage to get up here and say this means that you are passionately into what you believe in, and I respect that you care. But I feel like you're driving these people away. And he was like, you're going to hell. And I was like, all right, bro, fuck you.
Are we all going to hell then?
Well, then fuck you. I'll see you there, asshole. But I don't know. Sorry, excuse my language. It just, it bothers me. I think that a lot of the people that get really, really caught up in any kind of religion, I don't want to say that they're amiable because that sounds judgmental, but they have such pure and trusting hearts, and I'm not saying like, I don't know, I want to believe too, but there's a lot of things that don't line up to me. And with the whole switching from government or from something spiritual to like power, I think a lot of that probably happened during Constantine's role and how it all played out, because I think he had a vision where he saw like an army bearing a flag with a cross, and like if it weren't for him, Christianity wouldn't have spread out. But like the way that it spread was through like a lot of bloodshed and crusades, and the complete opposite of what it was all about to begin with. Right. And then of course the rules come in, and I'm bothered that there's a Gospel of Thomas lingering out there. There's the Gospel of Peter. People will say that these might not have been the actual guys, but there's also another book by John who wrote Revelations called the Apocryphon of John, or the Secret Book of John. And it explains, according to him, God told him the foundations of the earth, like how mankind was made. And it goes into some crazy details that Christians would never want to be preached. It says that demons fabricated human beings, and God came by and breathed life into them because they were trying to mock up something that he created. It's the craziest thing. But for me, I just want to know the truth. So I started reading all this stuff, and question after question after question could not be answered. And it was almost like offensive to a lot of the people when I would like even question the belief, because it boils back down to faith. And I'm like, well, I think I have enough faith to even read about it. And isn't that small enough as a mustard seed? So it's not a faith issue.
Yeah.
It's like a logic issue. And this mega belief is falling out from underneath me fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up Eckhart Tolle, because like I started getting into, and Constantine, because I started getting into like, okay, the King James wasn't the only version. There was other books. And then it was years later, was Constantine like 300, when they started like adding all the other books to this gospel, right? And for anyone who's listening, I just want to say, the Bible has been the book that's been around me the most, because I'm in, Western civilization in America, right? So this is, I'm sure if I was somewhere else, I'd be talking about the Quran, but this is just, that happens
It's
to be
actually
the
a
one.
really good point too.
I just want
on that as
I just want to say that, like, so I'm not like trying to be a proponent or a Bible. It's just the one that I've been around and exposed to the most, right?
Totally.
But then, so you've got these different versions. You got Constantine. They're saying, okay, we're going to compile, along with some simple gospels, a whole lot of other books. We're going to tack on the Old Testament. We're going to put in all this other stuff. And then you've got this really cluttered, large book, right? And there's a lot of great simple themes, but I love when you go back to just what's the simple, not belief, but the simple,
like the essence of
thought
his teaching.
Like you were saying, like, hey, we need to change. And I constantly have to change my mind thinking, because I'll turn into selfishness, I'll turn into doubt, and because I'm a failure myself and not have something greater to rely on, I'll go into fear, right? And so that switch has to happen not just once and be like, I'm saved. It's like over and over. It's like I need to find a higher thought, and something to believe in that way.
Yeah, we use the word God and every religion has a God, but I feel like the saddest thing that happens in human psychology when it comes to a religious approach to trying to be close to God is that it separates you from him from the get-go because of the notion of the concept of sin. But it bothers me too when I see Christians struggling and getting hung up on their sin, because they're supposed to believe that it's finished and that's already been taken care of, and it's not by works that they're saved. But for some reason, there's like a back door where it's always a work-based thing. Not always, but... And I'm not saying I have the answers. I feel so lost.
Well, I think we're all connected.
super
I think we're
lost.
all like scattered energy. We're all pieces of God. It's within us.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you go about your day and you're like interacting with certain, different people. And some people, it's like you feel this pulling towards and you feel this strong connection towards. And it's... I think we're all connected on a higher level. And if you really think about it, it has to do with the fact that we're all made up of the same molecules. We're all scattered energy. We all come from source, and we all go back to source.
Yeah. I don't know if you got to hear our last podcast with April, but we touched on that a lot, and more often now that we're getting into not just quantum mechanics and entanglement, but just like the nature of the universe. We see that we're all energy, we're all like just vibration, There were some beliefs that have talked about that for a long time, but we're starting to really support that scientifically. Okay, wait, so you mentioned the apocryphal
Apocryphin
of John
PHYN or something.
So okay, Sarah, demons that created the earth, was it aliens?
Yes.
Was John talking about aliens?
Yeah.
I think so. My belief, and I honestly don't know. I always say I have theories and I have beliefs, but I have no construct answers. Who does? But I have a belief that we do have alien races that have come here, you know, billions of years ago. I mean, I think we've had life on Earth way further back than what we have record of. And I do believe that there's been other types of alien beings that have come here, and we're kind of a science experiment. I think they spliced DNA and they came up with us. And I think some stuff is in the Bible, and actually it kind of relates, like fallen angels. And, you know, do you guys ever watch Ancient Aliens?
In the Old Testament, it says that the giants of the land came down and bred with the women, and their offspring became the legends of old.
Yeah,
and
the Pre-Adamites.
My buddy, he's the author of I'll Push You. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. He pushed his buddy across the Camino in a wheelchair. It's
nice.
Super awesome. But he presented that idea to me. What was the idea? Shoot, just lost my train of thought.
That we basically came from. So what I've heard is that it was our DNA, and our DNA comes from a spliced, like, alien DNA, and then Neanderthal. So there was, you know, other beings that lived here, and they wanted to create, like, basically emerge.
It's very fun to think about.
There's
no way to prove it.
About.
And then there's also the other fact of the matter is maybe that didn't happen, and maybe it all just evolved and spread out. But the reality, that as far as we know, is we're the pinnacle of consciousness, and that's quite godlike to me. And how are we going to express and be good vessels?
Yeah, I mean, for
that
sure.
Consciousness.
I'm reading a book called Sapiens right now, and it talks about that. It talks about the evolution of, like, how we started off, you know, foraging, and, you know, kind of the whole, what's my point here? So Neanderthals, you know, like, once they discovered fire and how to cook things, our intestines got smaller and our brains got larger. And then we had all these different evolutions of like how we became human and how we became so intelligent. And it has to do with our discoveries, you know, like, oh, if you cook food with fire, we can digest it easier. And then that way our brains can grow larger.
The craziest part to me, though, is, like, and maybe it's because of my religious upbringing, but I always have this undying, yeah, but how, but why, kind of, like, relentless psychopath inside of my brain that tortures me, that can't seem to fully just be like, okay, yeah, it all happened from stardust. I'm like, the endocrine system alone, there's like a chemical factory in our brains.
Does that help you be an artist, to, like, sit there and go crazy and go nuts, and you're like, I'm just going to practice my guitar in the same thing for 45 minutes straight until you get that hand motion like we were talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we may have Joseph play later on today, but I've known Joseph for a long time, and one of the coolest things about his percussive, I would almost say flamenco style of guitar, is, like, all the interesting hand movements that he has to, I think, come up by yourself. I don't think there was a YouTube back then when you started.
There's definitely techniques that other people use mixed in that I've kind of made hybrids of, but a lot of it's just like a hand dance.
Yeah, and I was always a fan of Ani DeFranco, who was, like, a really percussive guitar player, but you take it, like, 3 different levels at least above that to be able to play just up on the fret with your fingers while you're doing something that's percussive, you know, using your hands. And, like, I heard it from even another person. The first thing they're like, why does that kid have such long fingernails? And I'm like, oh, you haven't seen him play. You know,
he likes giving back scratches.
That's his craft.
Oh, I love back scratches.
And some guitar on the side.
I'll trade you some braids for some back scratches.
Deal.
All right.
Deal. I want those Viking French braids.
Yeah.
Yes, the 2 braids.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Just give me a sword and turn on some Highland music and let me spin around.
Yes.
And slay invisible monsters.
They're probably real.
I think that if you imagine it, where's the separation? I mean, outside of maybe being able to see it. I went out on Quinn's Pond the other day on a paddleboard, and there's, like, these pumps or whatever that feed the pond, but the water's moving. Like you'll be out there and it's deep and you can't see anything below you, and I'm like laying on my chest just paddling, and then you see like these bubbles and like this swirling, and I know that it's man-made and I know that it's not dangerous, but for fun I like to imagine there's like monsters under there.
Fun or fear?
It's like, it's fun for me to feel like it. I hate knowledge. It makes the world super boring, and like, like as we grow up and the more we learn, the more stressed out we get, and it's fun to just pretend like that there's big monsters under there, and it might come get me, and suddenly I want to swim away from that area, and it's fun again.
That's what we were like when we were kids. We had imagination. Like I used to just sit and make up stories in my head for hours, just sitting on my swing out in the front yard, hanging off the tree.
Yeah.
I had imaginary friends. I was in contact with the fairy realm on a daily basis.
And it was real.
I loved it.
It was real.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about someone who's creative and, talented in that way is like, they have to be tapped into that. You have to be tapped into the magic. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
You should be.
I'm bad at that.
No,
but you mentioned like children and like the imagination again. I don't know. Like it goes back to the whole philosophy of Jesus. He said, "Let the children come unto me, because for such, like theirs is the kingdom." And that's been one of the most amazing like scriptures or teachings that I've ever gotten from the Bible, because it's like I do enjoy the knowledge side of it, like, but sometimes I just wonder if that's the big mistake that we're all accidentally making.
Ego.
Like,
not the big mistake.
The more you figure it out, the more like you're unopen to not knowing.
You lose that innocence.
Yeah,
right.
Which is true faith.
You go in and you start having fear. Like at some point, I've heard like this: a kid will just jump at you because they know that you'll catch them, right? And then maybe around like 5 or 6, they'll stop because they've had that moment where somebody didn't catch them, right?
Yeah.
And going in with that, I mean, yes, faith, right? But almost, I want to look at it from the other side. You don't have these repetitive thoughts of
the
fear and
mind.
Failure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those become so reinforced that like, that's all you think about. You don't think about the 99 times that it worked. Think about the one time that it didn't, and then now you don't jump for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and then you become possessed by the thinker instead of being the thinker, because fear becomes the autopilot voice in your head.
So innocence lost is so easy. Just a few bad experiences.
It's super easy.
From years of being a child and being, loved and being cared for, and like everything's going to be okay. All of a sudden it's gone.
It's tragic. It's like, and I know that I guess that happens. That's part of life, and it's kind of an interesting. I guess that's the one beauty that can be found, is that if it weren't for the, like if it weren't for that process, you wouldn't be reminded of the innocence of what it was like when you were younger or before you had all those fears in your mind. I guess contrast is good. Khalil Gibran says, when you lay in bed, with joy in your heart, sorrow sits at the headboard. Like, it's inseparable. He says isn't the same like wine glass that holds your wine like hollowed out with the blade. Like, it's a beautiful idea that their joy and sorrow are inseparable. And I think the ego likes to be like, it likes happiness. I feel like I'm stealing all this from Eckhart Tolle, but I've been reading a lot of his stuff lately, and it's super good.
Do it.
But happiness is contingent on the outcome, and that's preference-based.
Yeah.
And so if things don't go your way, like, then you're unhappy or you're having a bad day. But it could be a great day for somebody else. Like, the natural state of being is joy, but when it's obscured by desire, you're gonna be fucked.
Yeah, I've been told to let go of the results. Just do what you can for other people.
My next record, I'm gonna call it Desire, because it's my single-handed demon.
When I'm in a results-based mind frame, I will never, because there's 20,000 different outcomes I could think about and another million that I couldn't even imagine, right? And it's never going to be the one that I want. But if I'm just in like okay, what's the next like right indicated action frame of mind, then I get surprised, and it's often pleasantly surprised, but even better, I'm free from the worry.
Yeah, and you are actually more in control to respond from like a sound position in your mind rather than maybe from like a frantic position because it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go.
Right. But I mean, so we're humans, right? Get back to the beginning, and we have that naturally, the joy and the sorrow together you're talking about, which is a beautiful thought, but it's also a bit heartbreaking, right? And then we have this anxiety. So of course, I think we're drawn to beliefs and thought systems that help us with that. I don't think they're bad. I'm just saying that, like, I feel like, of course, humans, herd pack animals, we're scared of bigger things. We can't control the universe. We get drawn into these. And then, you want to put the sinister twist on it. There's going to be a couple people who are like, I can be in charge of this group. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And even, that doesn't have to be religion. That can be nation. Right? It can be village. It can be nation. It can be race. Hey, we're scared. So, right. And we separate ourselves into these groups no matter what, based on, whatever we believe is different and safe at the same time, Where's that line?
I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah. I love this topic.
Me too.
I really do, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think that the church was supposed to be a building, personally.
Uh-huh.
I think, it drives me nuts because I feel like if you actually just calm down and listen to just the words that Jesus, whether or not he was the actual Son of God or the single-handed the only way to eternal life and to the Father. I think that he was a poet and a philosopher, and I feel like we misinterpreted what he said.
Yeah. Totally.
But he told Peter, he said, who do you say that I am? And he said, you're the Christ, the Son of God. And he's like, you're right, and flesh and blood hasn't revealed this to you, but the Spirit of the one who sent me. And he's like, and on this rock I'll build my church, and it's not going to be made by hands. And I'm like, okay, what is he saying?
Yeah.
Somehow Peter had the faith in what he was saying. So he's like, I always thought it was like, on the spiritual rock of the revelation of your understanding, that's where the church exists, is in that understanding.
Yeah.
That's where it's built.
And isn't that how you come to the next person? That's how you actually, you don't even have to
love
talk
based at that point. You don't have to
who
take
you
them
are.
someplace.
And that's who you are. I gotta say, man, like, you are one of the purest, kindest people that I've met in Boise, right? From the get-go. When I met you, I didn't even know that you were a musician. That's a funny story. But like, I just knew you as like a really kind dude that I saw around town every now and then. And you haven't really changed. Like, I know you've gone through a lot of life in the last 10 years, and so you've got a deeper understanding, that whole joy and sorrow combination, but you're still like a really pure, like, you still retain some of that innocence. You're still loving, right? And that's one of those things where I've always really admired you for, and like, yeah, you're a great musician, but that's honestly not how I think of you. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Joseph.
I'm happy to hear that.
I just think of you as an awesome guy.
Thanks, man. Likewise.
Well,
I just want to be I don't want to have an edge on people.
Mm-hmm.
I just want things to be good, and I just want to be a nice person. And it sucks because a lot of times I get mad. I flipped somebody off the other day that like almost ran into me. And I was like, ugh! Like, I don't do that hardly ever, but for whatever reason, like, something just tripped in me, and I don't know. And then, here, let me tell you a cool story. This is totally random, but
okay.
Because I wrestle with moments where I have the opportunity to not be nice or try to be loving, and I don't know. I'm a human. Like, you know how popular it is because of social media? Maybe you guys get this or not, but do you ever have, like, in-group friends send you sneaky Instagram videos or Snapchat videos of a completely random stranger that they're making fun of? Does that ever happen? Like, I feel like it's really popular. Even like meme-based things online are like unaware people that got filmed and then somebody put something funny about it. And like in our age right now, I feel like that's a huge immediate access to humor. It's like, for example, if you saw somebody on the 4th of July driving a truck with like 2 American flags, somebody would take a video of them next to them in a car and put it on their story and be like, America. Mm. Just to kind of make that person look dumb. And maybe he is dumb. I don't know. But I had like, so I'm like immersed in this. And without even meaning to, the other day I pulled up to my house and my next door neighbor had this landscaper guy there to work at his house, and he was driving this old Mazda truck, trying to get his thing started. And he didn't have a shirt on. He looked like he was like 45. He had like spiky bleach blonde hair, and his nipples were pierced with like big, huge metal hoops. And I immediately got a laugh inside. And I feel bad that even made me laugh, kind of. But then I went inside to like do some dishes, and he was like right in their backyard, and like you could see the nipple rings. And I was like, this is great. So I like started taking a video of him. And dude, like, if there's such thing as like invisible meteors, it one shot straight from the ether and hit me like dead between the eyes, and I almost started crying because like I was like aware of the notion of my heart in that moment, and it killed me. Like I would make my friends laugh, build me up at the expense of somebody who's got their own story. He's out there working his ass off, probably trying to pay child support or maybe for his whatever. I don't know. And so I don't want to see people through the eyes of judgment or through the eyes of, haha, like I've got this figured out. He doesn't. Let's make fun of him. That's fucked up. But that's like a real war that is in my mind.
That's exactly what Freud said humor was, though. The humor and like why we laugh is because we are, again, identifying a group. Like this actually gets back into, the whole missionary thing. It's like we want to identify ourselves as other, as separate, and as better. And so, that's why a lot of bad jokes that happened, at least like, side note, I think that at least in society that I've been around, we've been growing up. When I was young, we made fun of people who were mentally challenged. We made fun of people with alternate sexualities, right?
Yeah, there's definitely an awareness of love and respect.
And that's,
thank God.
That's gone away because we've had another generation. But also, like my grandmother's generation, she made fun of other people, people of other races, right? But then my generation growing up, I knew that was wrong, right? So it's weird. It's like cutting away the layers of what we can, what they found was funny, what we used to say, which was not nice on the playground.
Do you think that has something to do with our evolved consciousness? Because I feel like we're resonating on a higher vibration, and things that maybe felt okay before are not feeling okay anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and like we have to be more aware.
We don't vibe with it, literally.
Right, we don't vibe with it. It doesn't feel right. Like I have moments like that too, where it's like I'm a female. I work around women, and I'll, get sucked into gossip, and I'll be talking about something, and I'm like, God, I just feel shitty, talking about somebody or like making fun of somebody, and like I'll get sucked into it so easily.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
It's slippery.
So easy.
Actually, it's almost a mistake. It's not even intentional.
Yeah. And I just am such a believer in karma, and I'm such a believer in what you put out there, you get back. And
right.
You
want people talking
what
about
are your
about
intentions? You. Yeah.
Or snickering about you behind your back. But
and I'm sure they are. I'm sure everybody's getting made fun of.
I love my coworkers, and I'm sure some of them are going to listen to this. I love them, but I'm a weirdo. So like, I'm pretty sure they probably say some stuff about me in good heart though, but. I'm sure they're probably not saying mean stuff.
Right, but
it's easy for it to slip down the mean.
Our village is growing larger. When you're just a small town and you don't really know what's going on states away or over the hills, right? You have this, we are really separate, right? And so, like, you're right, as we get higher consciousness, as we become more aware, fuck the fucking internet. As we can see what's going on around the world, like our tribe grows larger, and we're like, those are people too. We're not trying to, say that somebody with a different accent is an other. We're trying to just say, okay, we're all people, right?
But the internet can be used for good. It can be, it's a way.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is. You have access to good and evil, or, there's anything you want at your fingertips. But the great thing about it is it's bringing people together who are like-minded, especially with this kind of stuff. And you get to share in that, and you get to share with people. But the problem is that people are starting to use that as their reality. and they're not engaging with people in real life. Some people, I mean, this isn't always the case, but some people are getting so sucked into that, like with social media and, you know, online forums, is that they're starting to associate their identity in that way, and they're able to put a filter on that and kind of show the identity that they want to show.
Okay, so
big time. There's people I know online, and I see them in person, and they like, we talk so good online, and I see them in person, and they don't know how to talk to me. It's weird.
Yeah. Because there's a fear of being in reality.
Yeah. It's like, this is who I am. And people don't want to always show their authentic side. And that was something I was talking to April about. Like, I struggle with this loneliness because sometimes I feel like I can't connect to people because I can really tell when people aren't being authentic. And I can tell when people have just like this false persona that they're presenting. And when I'm around that, especially when I'm in groups and people are really trying to put this, like, you know, good face forward, I can feel it. And it just, I don't know, it bothers me. And I get this feeling of like, ugh, I just want to step back. And does that make any sense?
Yeah, you almost kind of shut down from it.
Yeah. And I think that's why I get, like, it's hard for me sometimes to be around a lot of people because I feel like it's just, there's too much falsity with what they're presenting. And I know that sounds negative, but I'm just getting real, you know?
It's kind of true, though. I feel like there's like this huge pressure to be a rock star for anybody. Like, you can't just have a page and make a post anymore. Like, everyone's post is like so knowledge loaded, or like you can't even see a selfie without getting like preached at about like what love is, or like all. And I'm just like, why? Because you're going to get judged. Things that are permanent, like when you write something down, that's what sucks about writing music or songs sometimes. It's kind of scary because, like, once you type something or write it online, like, it's out there and you can be judged. But if you're just talking in person, you might say something and someone will be like, yeah, but I disagree. Like, I see it like this. And you can be like, oh, yeah, totally. Like, I do see it that way, too. I guess I see it kind of both ways. And there's not, like, an argument about it. So the sucky part about it is then you either just don't say anything at all, or just don't care, or you find yourself fabricating stuff, and it's so ingenuine and so fake to me. I hate it.
Well, I'm a little fake because if there's some cute hippie girl that's trying to tell me about her version of what she believes in, I'll be like, oh yeah, totally.
Tell me about it.
I'm into that.
I'm vibing with you.
Yeah, right. Like,
have you heard of Michael Hedges?
Oh wait, I gotta write that one down. I'll use that next time.
They'll be like, no.
Yeah, but like, okay, so the internet, yes, it can be used for bad. Yes, it can be used for good. You know, I just wanted to finish up that previous thought about Freud, but the other thing about humor that I really wanted to say was what I get now is, instead of humor that creates a group of other and then our group, which is better, is humor that's identification. And I'm sure you guys have seen the memes where it's like, you know, I really shouldn't go ahead and do it, right? And we all laugh at that because it was like, that's me too, right? And it's not putting anyone down. It's that we're all in this same like group of humanity.
I love that kind of humor, actually.
Right. So identification humor rather than like
objectification humor.
Yes. Exactly. And so I wanted to put that in there as like a little counterpoint. But when you were talking about the internet, you reminded me,
great.
Like, we talked about the freaking kids online who are woke as fuck, right? And I kind of get why, you know, I grew up in my little freaking town of 5,000 people, and we had a lot of humor about other groups because, you know, it was little white bread, like middle class town, and anything different was not only shunned, but was like humiliated to death. Like, you could not be different in that town, right? Which is why I don't live there. It's honestly like why I don't freaking live there. And then, you know, my mom's like, do you want this house? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, it's now worth a lot of money because it's whatever, like little town just south of the New Hampshire border in Massachusetts. But like, I didn't have a connection to anything that was outside of that town, right? I didn't have the internet, so I could learn that there were other people that were, you know, crazy and different like me, or 10 times as crazy and different as me so that I could feel pretty normal, you know, compared to some YouTube kids or something like that. And I also didn't really know what was going on in the world. All I had was my own little box, right? I had some like sci-fi books. I had some like 80s toys, right? And that
Stretch Armstrong,
that kind of stuff.
but that was
you
the
know,
90s, wasn't it?
like Nerf and when it first came out, and like Super Soaker when it first came out. Like that's my generation, right? And now for
Cool.
people to be so informed and so connected, I think it's really cool. But it brings up this whole like new generation of kids that are like the quote unquote woke, you know? And
Wokies.
yeah. And
I know, and I worry to sound like that. It sucks because like being aware of that makes me not want to talk about anything that's enlightening, especially online, because I don't want to like eat my own medicine. I'm like, there's already enough truth out there. I'm just gonna shut up and try to figure more of it out.
does it make you feel afraid?
I shut down. I hardly post online anymore, and when I do, I feel like I need to make it meaningless so it actually gets an interaction. I don't know. It just seems like it's cool. The internet's rad. There's a lot of amazing things about it. I prefer real life. I remember when I was a kid, like playing would be my brother and I would go out front
Yeah.
after school and get on our bikes and just go up and down the street until we found one of our friends.
Yeah.
And who knows what was going to happen from there. But even as an adult, like the internet can like actually rob me from what I would think would be more real life. Like I'll wake up, check Instagram, and I started noticing a pattern. I started feeling really depressed by spending, the more time I spend online, the more detached I feel, even though
And
it's supposed
anxious?
to be, yeah, really anxious. Like, man, everyone's getting engaged, or this guy just retired and he's like 29, and here I am 31 years old and I don't got anything to show for. I'm not cool enough for this world kind of feeling,
Totally.
which is dumb.
I was thinking about when you said like afraid, like that I'll get checked online, right? And every now and then somebody will put something out there which is, don't you guys understand Trump's doing a great job for the country? And I'll just fucking check somebody because I gotta feel important in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of afraid of getting checked, but at the same time, it's helpful. In fact, like, okay, so after last week's podcast with April, we took April out to eat at Bardenay downtown,
nice.
right? Because I was like, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten, I'm getting hangry, you know, I got a huge salad with tuna. And then I'm trying to sit there and talk to April about some stuff that we didn't go over in the podcast, like relationship stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, about how it's tough to navigate being a dude in the world right now, especially being a dude who I've never been that assertive in relationships. I'm pretty loud, I'm pretty outspoken, but I've always actually been that insecure boy, not even man, insecure boy when it comes to going after a relationship, asking a girl out on a date, right? You know? And I think what we came around to was that like a lot of people out there have had trauma, right? And I'm like, okay, great. Like, yeah, and you know, like, and everyone should work on their own trauma. And I'm like, yeah, great. And I'm like, 90% of people out there have had some sort of trauma, and like 90% of those aren't working on it. You know, like, what does that actually relate to in like real life? You know, and so I might have been getting checked a bit in that conversation because I was trying to relate some ideas to April, and you know, she's a lot more woke than I am, but it's good because it makes me think outside my box, which is scary, which does make me a bit angry at first, but then it's like, okay, I got to accept there's a lot more out there than what I understand, right? And I can always understand other humans more when I really just want them to understand me, but I should understand them.
Yeah. There's two possible outcomes, I feel like, to any perception. Two main outcomes: wrath or kindness.
Uh-huh.
And I think the thing that's been helping me a lot lately, because I tend to drift towards being pessimistic about it all. I'll find the problems and then get overwhelmed. But there's always like an equally good, I don't know, solution. Never mind. I don't know how that fits into what you were just saying, but
Oh, it's okay.
like getting checked sucks online. That's why I don't really, I don't know. I just kind of keep to myself, honestly.
In the end, I'd rather have deeper conversations. I really would. Like, I might hurt in the moment to be like, oh, wait, I didn't know that. I should have been more aware. I was really closed off and selfish. But, like, in the end, I want to have deeper conversations and deeper connections.
That's kind of the biggest reason why I wanted to start this podcast was I want to connect with people. I want to feel like we can have conversations like this that you wouldn't have in, like, normal everyday interaction. I want to get deep. I want to get deep with people.
I love that.
Yeah, so do I. And, you know, I think this is just such a great way to do it. But I've also discovered that through this, it's helped me open up more and just help be, I don't know. It's like I feel like I've been able to break some walls down even just by exploring this whole forum. Is like I when I'm interacting with people in everyday life, it's like I really want to start showing more vulnerability, because that's something that scares me. Is like if I show people I'm vulnerable, then I feel like they're able to kind of see within me, and I don't know. It's just, I feel like everybody's kind of, I feel like when you start interacting with people on that level and you start kind of showing your authentic self and your vulnerabilities that you have within, that's where you start really connecting with people. And so many people are afraid to do that. And there's something so beautiful about, like, just finding that deep connection with people in your everyday life.
Yeah. A few years ago, I told my friends, I want to be a missionary. Back to the mission thing. I want to be a missionary of understanding. I want to ask people with different religions, what is it about this? Like, what's your story? I'm curious. Like, and I think that there's a lot of strength in humility and in vulnerability. Like, most people are so concerned about what people are going to think about them when they go out into public, but I'm pretty sure that if that's the case, when you walk into a bar, nobody cares what you look like, or if you're cool, or if you're smart, or if you're popular. They only care what you think about them. So in that, I thought, well, if I just start from a genuine place, start finding things about everybody that I'm around that I think is cool, and give them value, suddenly, like, then obviously I must have value in their eyes, because I'm giving something called value to them. And it's cool when you do that. And I think it all starts from not taking yourself too seriously, being vulnerable. So they might be like, oh, who's this long-haired clown that's, like, telling me that he likes my shoes? Like, is he trying to flirt with me or whatever? Like, the situation will be, I don't know. No, I'm not. I mean, sorry, if you wanted me to, I probably could, but it's just fun to be real. It's hard to be fake. It's so hard after a while, and I think it catches up to everybody. That's why they go home and do their drugs and get wasted or binge on pornography or whatever fills somebody's void. Every single person has a void.
Yeah.
All of us. So we can fill each other's voids instead.
Okay, but
fill me up.
You're talking about it's hard to be fake. And yet I still know that there's layers. Like Sarah's talking about, there's layers of being courageous enough to be vulnerable. There's layers of, like, loving yourself enough that it doesn't matter if not everyone understands or accepts who you are. And so I don't think like, because I get that, right? I've lived with masks all my life, right? But I think that a lot of it is like, how much am I able to, in the present, let go of each layer of that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right? It's a present moment thing, because if you premeditate it, then it becomes just another layer of false truth, almost.
Yeah, totally.
Sarah, do you remember when we had Johnny on?
Yeah.
And we talked for a quick second?
Nope.
It was so long ago.
It was so long ago.
But
Johnny boy.
Okay, so Johnny traveled across the country, found the blues that he was looking for, but it wasn't actually the blues that he was looking for, and ended up making his own blues, right? But in it, I was talking to him about how when we travel, we can kind of be ourselves more, right? Because even like you and I, we've known each other for so long, off and on. It's like, I shouldn't look at you as the person that I knew 10 years ago, and you shouldn't look at me as the person that I was 10 years. And yet we still kind of carry roles with us,
Very
right?
true, yeah.
And so the thing that we mentioned was like, when you're in a new town, you could just be you. Like there's no need to be masks. You can, he's a polite guy. Walk in, be polite, ask for something in a store. I'm a loud, obnoxious guy. I can go in and try to make everyone laugh. And because that's deep down, right? And then what is there? But is there still another layer behind that? I got to do it to make people like me. I don't know, right? I got to find like these layers.
Yeah, there is a never-ending scrutiny to any solution, and that it just gets that'll damn me up so hard. But I feel you. I feel you. Even Jesus said a prophet isn't welcome in his own town. So to speak, yeah. When you have something to uphold. It's a lot easier to let loose when you're not around people, I feel like.
Now we're going to hear some beautiful music by Joseph Lyle.
Save me from all that I know. It cuts and it tears my soul. Save me from losing my head, and love me, don't let me forget that it's the waiting and the longing and the hoping. There's a throbbing in my heart that never lets you go. So I'm waiting and I'm longing and I'm hoping. Yeah, I promise if I find you, I will never let you go. Well, if I find you, I will never let you go. Save me, I'm running and I'm lost. If peace has a price, just tell me the cost. Save me, I'm losing my head. And love me, don't let me forget that it's the waiting and the longing and the hoping and the throbbing in my heart that never lets you go. Said I'm waiting and I'm longing and I'm hoping. Yeah, I promise if I find you, I will never let you go. But if I find you, I will never let you go. Well, if I find you, I will never let you go. If I find you, I will never let you go. Said if I find you, I will never let you go.
The Outer Fringe was recorded at Triii-Point Studios. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved. Statements and opinions made on the show do not necessarily reflect the views or beliefs of Triii-Point Studios or its members.